went to the gym on Thursday to work out with my trainer, whom I adore. He is just the perfect trainer for me right now in my life. And he's entertaining, he's funny, he's switching things up all the time, he's challenging, he's pushing me. And so one of the first things he says always is, how's the body feeling? So I'm like, yeah, it's feeling fine, strong, whatever. And this is what I want to focus on today. And so even though I said I want to focus on upper body, he's like, we're going to do some squats today. Pick up a 35-pound weight. And what came out of my mouth is not what I'm going to say right now. But it was basically, are you crazy? 35 pounds with squats? And he goes, yeah, pick it up. And I'm like, do you remember 2 months ago, you asked me to do that with a 20-pound one, and I couldn't walk for 4 days? And he's like, pick it up, you're stronger than you think. And as I'm listening to him instruct me and support me and encourage me, and as I hear the things coming out of my mouth, there's also the religious scientist observer in me going, what is all this garbage coming out of your mouth that you think you can't lift these 35 pounds? I mean, it was heavy. I don't know who here trains or lift weights, but doing a squat with a 30-pound weight, it's a lot. Anyway, so I grabbed it, and then I'm like, okay, you know what? I just want to get the form right. So I put it down, and I did what he said, perfect, now pick up the weight. So I picked up the weight, and I do it, and I'm like, oh, I did it. Like, it was challenging, but I did it. And then I did 3 more, and he's like, okay, now pick up the 30-pound weight, because that weight, honestly, looks humongous in your teeny tiny little hands. I'm like, okay, fine. Was that your plan all along? Like, pick up the 35, and I'll be okay with the 30? But anyway, it was very interesting to me as he was saying this, as I was hearing myself kind of go, no, 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 and then like, do I believe the stuff that I'm talking about and learning and teaching and inspiring people to empower all the time, or don't I? And so to me, this was a really, really neat reminder for myself as I was kind of juggling these 2 perspectives at the same time of, this is way too heavy for me at this juncture of my working outedness. And I am the infinite potentiality of the universe expressing, and I can do and be anything I set my mind to. And so I just wanted to share that with you because that's what I'm talking about today, about the power of our mind. That's what we're talking about here a lot, but today I'm going to focus on the mind. And so for those people here who aren't familiar with New Thought or the New Thought movement, this is a global movement which is just around 200 years old or so. And the father of New Thought is known as, or identified as, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby. Such a cool name. And he was involved in mesmerism or hypnosis, but realized that you didn't have to hypnotize someone in order to be able to affect the energy that they are by using the mind. And so New Thought really is founded on the principle of mental healing. That we can use our minds in a certain, specific, intentional, powerful, directional way so that we can heal ourselves, our physical beingness. Now, a lot of times it doesn't necessarily feel like that. We get colds, we injure ourselves, we feel tired, low energy, whatever. And then we're like, oh, I have a cold, I'm feeling weak, like this, whatever. And we get so wrapped up in the story that we tell ourselves, it's like our body is controlling our mind. But the whole time, we're just buying into the story that we're telling ourselves, right? We're deciding, whether consciously or unconsciously, this is the perspective from which I'm going to show up. This is the perspective from which I'm going to experience life. And so ours is to choose every single moment. How do we want to show up? Do we want to show up as the perceived limitations of our life? As the perceived limitations of this flesh and blood and bone that lives from 0 to whatever it is? Or do we want to remember that even that flesh and blood and bone and all that stuff that makes up our physical beingness is pure energy, like unlimited, boundless, limitless energy. And when we remember that that's who we are, when we remember that we are love, that we are greatness on demand expressing, then that's what we're focusing on. And guess what? When you're focusing on that, you're not focusing on the cold or the pain or the inflammation or whatever it is, the dis-ease in your body. Because you're focusing on that infinitude and that creativity that you truly are. So Emma Smiley writes in Magnificent Assumption, Every disease of our body is caused from our anxiety, our jealousy, our hatred, our bitterness, our resentment, our judgment of others, and most of all, our judgment and belittling of ourselves and our lack of belief in ourselves. If we truly believed in ourselves, our bodies would be whole. And so here, she's not just talking about self-confidence, she is talking about knowing with a capital K, who and what we truly are. That we are that energetic divine flow that is always moving and grooving its way in, through, and as everyone. That we are the same power that is that blazing sun that for the first time in 5 weeks is actually behind some clouds today. That we are every single twinkling star in the sky. That we are the energy, the intelligence, the allness of being that created all of that. That's who we are. And if that's who and what we are, can a little cold stand in our way? Can some joint inflammation stand in our way? Can the person who pissed us off stand in our way? Well, it can feel like that, for sure. But guess what? It's not so much about this is what's happening. It's like, okay, this is information. I'm choosing to decide something, tell a story about what's happening, but I also get to decide how I want to respond. And I get to decide what I want to focus on. And so I know I want to focus my mind as often as possible on that allness, on that infinite potentiality, on those infinite possibilities of what my life can look like. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more challenging, because it's an ongoing process. Consistency here is key. So going back to the gym with that 35-pound weight and the squats, I'm still feeling it in my quads today, okay? But you know why I'm feeling it? Because it's my muscles getting ripped out of their comfort zone. You know, they are literally growing as I'm talking to you right now because they were forced, they were challenged, they were pushed to stretch beyond the capacity that was there up until that moment before I picked up that 35-pound weight. Now, do we need to do something like that maybe with our mental work? Yeah. We do. And so my question to you is, how often are you training your mind? How often are you engaged in some mental fitness? Because that is key. Coming here on a Sunday or on a Wednesday or all the other stuff that we have going on throughout the month, that's great. But that's almost like a supplement to what it is that you're doing on your own. And so my question to you is, and my invitation to you is, what is your mental fitness routine at home? How do you engage and activate and expand your mind? How do you up-level in consciousness every day? And if you're sitting there thinking, I'm not really sure, well then it's time to pick some stuff. Try some things out. Trial and error, right? Ask some people you know who are vibrating in a super high level of consciousness, what do you do? What do you do to expand your mind? What do you do? Sandy, I know you do something.
I like to cook, make art, read.
Okay, cook, make art, and read. And Kat, how about you? What do you do?
Well, that's a good question. I do a lot of different little things. Some art stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Cooking, absolutely not. Avoiding cooking.
I'm with you.
Learning languages
Yeah.
constantly.
Yeah.
New language. And just being involved and caring about whoever comes my way.
Beautiful. Caring, being involved, the activities that you both described, you gotta be present in those activities. I mean, you can kind of sort of maybe do cooking or create art or whatever and be focusing on something else, but how much better is it when you're actually focusing on the task that you're involved in? When you're present to every single moment, to every single nuance, to every color, texture, sound, sizzle, whatever it is that is going on. How amazing is it when we use our minds intentionally? And so that's what I'm reminding everybody about today, that it is ours to do. Nobody can do it for us. You can come here on Sunday, you can listen to me or whoever else is at the front of the room. You can listen to your podcast and go to your, like those online things where Michael Beckwith and Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza are talking. But nobody can do the work for you. We all have to do our own mental work. We all have to engage in our own mental fitness routine. So, Joe Dispenza is who I wanted to talk about. Who here knows about Joe Dispenza and how he healed himself? Okay, he was 23 years old, training for a triathlon or something like that. He had already done the swimming portion. Actually, I think he was in the triathlon. He was swimming, he did the swimming, and then he was on his bike and he got hit by an SUV. And was told that he was probably going to be a paraplegic. And that he had the choice to either have these really intensive surgeries and physiotherapy, which just sounded horrible, or he could do what he was convinced he could do and use his mind to heal himself. And it took him 10 weeks of intentional, purposeful focus. And he had an understanding of anatomy because he's a chiropractor. So he would travel inside his body and he would go and just repair every single vertebra. And if he kind of got distracted or whatever, he would go and he would start again. And he just focused until one day he was able to get up and walk. This is the power that we all have. Joe Dispenza isn't special. Like, he's super cool and he's engaging and he's got, a huge audience, but he's no more special than any of us, right? This is kind of like the way we talk about Jesus. He was an example, not the exception. We can all be vibrating high at that level of consciousness. So Ernest Holmes also writes, there is but one subjective mind in the universe. It is deductive, receptive, plastic, neutral, impersonal, and creative. It is the stuff from which all things are made. It's almost like it's this incredible, amazing goo that is just waiting for us to impress our ideas, our desires, our dreams upon it, and then it spits it out, and that's our life experience. But remember that in that sea of subjectivity, all thoughts, all beliefs, all ideas of all time, all memories, it's all in there. And so if what we're thinking, what we're impressing upon it, isn't in alignment with what's already in there and being focused on unconsciously, that unconscious focus is what's going to show up in our life experience. So the mental fitness routine is about getting this in alignment with what's being impressed on it so that this is what ends up being our life experience. And in order for that to happen, we need to be consistent. We need to do whatever it is that nourishes our soul, that feeds our heart, that amplifies our consciousness and expands us into new and different ways of thinking and being. Because otherwise, we're just going to experience more of the same. Our best thinking that got us here, our tendencies, our behaviors, everything that got us to this moment, we're just going to keep recycling and repeating, rinsing and repeating as we go. So we need to try new and different things, and learning new things like languages is a great one, and participating in activities where we are present and are not distracted and focusing on other things, integral to our expansion. Ernest Holmes writes also in The Science of Mind, there is no process of healing, but there is generally a process in healing. This process is the time and effort which we undergo in our realizations of truth. So speaking of truth, what are all the layers that are muddying the truth of who we are? What are the layers of perspectives? What are the stories that we've been hanging on to and telling ourselves that have, it's worked until now, but now they're getting kind of cumbersome and achy and tired and whatever, and I'm going to let them go. And even though my body feels so weird and contorted as I let them go, eventually, because I let them go, I'm starting to entertain new stories. I'm starting to hold on to new thoughts and think new ideas and have new experiences. Look at this. My body now feels fine because I dug down to the truth of who I am, and that's how I'm showing up. Now, Glenn asked me a couple of days ago to watch a series with him that I really had no interest in watching. But I'm watching it, and it's really it's fascinating, it's heart-wrenching, it is quite powerful. Band of Brothers. Anyone here seen it? A Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg war series, which was based on a book, I forget the author right now. Stephen Ambrose. And someone we know, Glenn and I know through the Global Trade Center Los Angeles, was one of the executive producers and script writers, Eric Bork. He won an Emmy for that. So we watched 2 episodes so far, and the episode that we watched last night, these guys this is towards the end of the First World War, And this is Second World War. And it is about Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, and 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 101st Airborne Division. I'll be honest, I don't know what all those numbers mean, but when I saw that, I'm like, that's a whole lot of people who were involved in this if there are these numbers, and this was just one little section of all the people who were involved in this infantry regiment. So these were some of the guys who trained how to parachute out of planes and then go and whatever it is that they were supposed to do. And they were going into France, into Normandy. And so the scene that we watched was nighttime. They're flying at night, okay, in this tin can, which isn't insulated in any kind of way, super rickety. They're all done up in these parachutes and everything. They have no idea what's going to happen, but they have trained for this. And then all of a sudden, the bombs and the gunfire and everything starts coming up from below, and they have to dive into that with their parachutes. And so there are planes that are being like bombed and torn apart and whatever, flying around, their wings are getting knocked off, people are on fire, and these guys, they have to mentally prepare themselves like they have been for months on end to get to this point, to jump out of that plane into those bombs and into this darkness where they don't even know if they're going to land in the right place, which a lot of times they didn't. And so there's a line that one of the main characters, who is actually a real person, offers. How do you prepare yourself? Each man must prepare himself mentally to make that jump. And so when I heard that, I thought, wow. Because not only is he talking about like to make that jump, but to make that jump in consciousness, to know that I can do this. I can do this no matter what the outcome, no matter what is happening around me. And in their case, it's bombs going off, it's nighttime, it's clouds, it's other planes being destroyed all around them. For us, it means the thoughts we're thinking. It means the beliefs that we're holding on to that we might not even be aware of. It means what other people are saying about us, what we're saying about ourselves. Those are the things that we can let go of, and we can jump from that level of consciousness to a higher level of consciousness to remember that I am so much bigger and more powerful and profound than any of that stuff that's going on. So that's what that reminded me of. And I just thought we all get to do that any moment of any day. Every single moment is a brand new moment to heal, to grow, to expand, to open up to the infinite possibilities of who we truly are. And so the title of my talk today is, The Mind Controls the Body, Not the Other Way Around. Now, I don't know what is going on in this picture, and there are probably a bunch of stories that we can all make up with these kids, but I thought you guys are going to remember this picture more than you would probably remember some kind of like quantum graphic or something that I was initially going to put up. And so the story I'm telling myself here is, whatever's going on here, who's having a better time? Who's choosing to respond in a way that shows us that he's actually enjoying what's happening? They're both experiencing the same thing, but to me it looks like the kid on the right is having a blast, or doesn't care what he's being told or instructed to do, because he's just so in the moment enjoying whatever it is that he's enjoying. We all get to choose like that. Every moment of every day, we decide. So it doesn't really matter, how did I get here? How did this sickness happen? How did I end up in that accident? You can dive into that if you want. But what's really important is focusing on the present moment. Right here, right now. How am I responding? How am I feeling? What is this stirring up in me? And how am I choosing to move forward? Now, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get to that stage, and that's okay. But eventually you want to get to that stage, because otherwise it's just going to be more of the same that you've experienced up until now. So this jump in consciousness, this is about mental training, something that I invite everyone here to get into, everyone to establish some kind of mental fitness routine. Because like Brian Kelly said in our 90 breathwork journey yesterday, if I always do what I've always done, I'll always be where I have always been. So, Like Emma Smiley says, stop thinking sick and start thinking well. The power that grew the body can heal it. So when I go back to the gym next week, even if he tells me, pick up an 85-pound weight, I'm gonna do it. Because I know there is that in me. When I focus on the allness of me, then I can do whatever it is that I set my mind to. And I want to set my mind rightly. And each and every one of us has the power and capability to do that. So my question to you is, does the mind control the body? The answer is yes. How much though? Only you can decide. Thank you, and so it is.